On a warm Sunday in July 2001, just 3 weeks before her planned wedding, 28-year-old Nikki McCown dropped off the face of the earth and has never been seen again. Earlier that day, she had attended church with her fiancé and 9-year-old daughter and was working through her list of wedding errands. That afternoon, Nikki headed out alone to do laundry, a routine chore on an ordinary day. But at the laundromat, two men started harassing her, making her uncomfortable enough that she left her clothes in the dryer and rushed back to her mother's nearby home. After venting to her mother about the threatening men, Nikki refused to abandon her laundry, figuring that these two were unlikely to actually do anything to her in broad daylight. She decided to quickly retrieve her clothes and finish washing them at home, then continue preparing for her fast-approaching wedding. With that, Nikki headed out again, and she never returned. Her sudden disappearance left her large, tight-knit family in shock and her community grasping for answers. How could a beloved mother, daughter, and bride-to-be simply vanish in broad daylight? Over 2 decades later, the case of Nikki McCown remains unsolved and haunting. Nikki McCown was a 28-year-old mother and the youngest of 10 siblings in a big, loving family. She worked as an accounting clerk at a correctional facility in Dayton, Ohio, and was taking college classes with dreams of becoming a U.S. Marshal. By the summer of 2001, Nikki was engaged to her high school sweetheart, Bobby Webster, and eagerly planning their wedding that was just weeks away. Family and friends described Nikki as kind, funny, and determined, a perfectionist who put her heart into her career, her daughter, and her upcoming marriage. By all accounts, she was in a great place in life and excited for the future. But Nikki was also harboring a dark secret that may be the key to cracking this case wide open, something I'll come to in a moment. Those who knew Nikki also insist she would never have left on her own. She was deeply devoted to her family and responsibilities, so when she failed to return home on July 22, 2001, it raised immediate red flags. That Sunday evening, Nikki didn't pick up her daughter or call anyone, behaviors completely out of character for her. As night fell with no word from Nikki, her mother and sisters grew frantic. By the next morning, they went to the Richmond police to report Nikki missing, desperate to start the search for her. After Nikki went missing, some key events have added to the mystery of her case. On July 25, 2001, with Nikki still missing, her fiancé, Bobby Webster, canceled their upcoming wedding. I'll get to this more in a moment, but this made him look very suspicious to a lot of people, even though it turned out he had a really great explanation for it. On November 3, 2001, nearly 4 months later, Nikki's vehicle was found abandoned at an apartment complex in Dayton, Ohio. The truck's door lock was punched in, the ignition was tampered with, and the battery and stereo had been removed. Inside, police discovered 2 baskets of Nikki's clean, folded laundry, the same clothes she had been washing. The complex was the very place where Nikki's ex-boyfriend lives, and where she had once lived with him. Again, I'll get to this more in a moment. On February 3, 2010, almost 9 years later, a grand jury indicted Nikki's former co-worker Tommy Swint for an unrelated 1991 slaying in Dayton. As officers moved to arrest him that day, Swint ended up doing the dirty work himself and can no longer be charged with anything. But let's get back to the immediate investigation for a moment. From the outset, Nikki McCown's loved ones and the police suspected foul play. Investigators considered several suspects and scenarios, from strangers at the laundromat to those closest to Nikki. The 2 unknown men who had harassed her at the laundromat were briefly persons of interest, but surveillance footage showed Nikki leaving the laundromat safely and alone. They conclude that it was unlikely they abducted her in broad daylight, but despite efforts, those men were never identified. Attention then turned toward Nikki's inner circle. Her fiancé, Bobby Webster, faced intense scrutiny, as is common in cases like this. Bobby's behavior after Nikki's disappearance raised eyebrows. Within days, he canceled their wedding and attempted to get refunds for the venue and other expenses. He even pawned the wedding rings amongst other activities which were viewed as unseemly. When questioned by police, Bobby explained he needed the money to fund search efforts, but to Nikki's family his actions seemed oddly hasty. Investigators had him take a polygraph test, and according to police, he didn't pass. However, there was no physical evidence linking Bobby to Nikki's fate, and his alibi on July 22nd was solid. Notably, in time, authorities announced that Bobby was no longer a suspect. They accepted that he had canceled everything so that he could free up funds to help the search for Nikki, which quite frankly is the right thing to do in this instance. Another person in Nikki's life came under scrutiny due to a startling discovery. When Nikki's truck was found in Dayton, it was parked at the apartment complex of her former boyfriend, the father of her daughter. This coincidence initially raised suspicions. Could there have been an altercation or unresolved issues with her ex? Police looked into it, but the ex-boyfriend had a rock-solid alibi, as he was at work at the time Nikki went missing, and he voluntarily submitted to a polygraph test. According to reports, he was extremely helpful and was willing to do anything he could to help this investigation. After all, the mother of his child was missing, and if he really had nothing to do with it, it makes sense that he would go above and beyond. With nothing tying him to the case, he was effectively cleared as a suspect early on, though at that time nothing explained how her vehicle was so close to where he lived. The investigation reached a turning point when a secret love triangle came to light. Months into the case, Nikki's sister revealed that Nikki had been seeing a co-worker named Tommy Swint on the side. This was a huge development. Bobby had been unaware of the relationship, and it introduced a new potential motive and suspect. Tommy Swint was a former corrections officer who worked with Nikki at the prison. In fact, Swint had been quietly considered a person of interest since shortly after Nikki vanished, but now the evidence of an actual affair gave more weight to that suspicion. By all accounts, Tommy Swint's interest in Nikki was obsessive and unhealthy. He had a history of overstepping boundaries with her. For instance, he once sent lingerie as a quote-unquote gift to Nikki's home ahead of her wedding, which greatly upset her. On another occasion, one of Nikki's sisters found Swint at Nikki's house uninvited, and it appeared he might have been trying to assault Nikki, though he played it off as a joke. These incidents were alarming in hindsight and suggested that Swint was dangerously fixated on her. Detectives digging into Swint learned more troubling facts. Swint lived in the Dayton area, not far from where Nikki's truck was recovered. It also came to light that on the day she went missing, Nikki had phoned a co-worker in Dayton about a beauty product, possibly indicating plans to visit a store there. This fueled a theory that Nikki might have driven to Dayton willingly, perhaps to meet someone or run an errand, and then encountered foul play. Swint, being in that area and eager to see her, could have arranged to meet her under fairly innocent pretenses. As the years went by, Tommy Swint remained a key suspect, but always just out of reach. Disturbingly, in 2007, he even became a police officer in a nearby Ohio town, concealing his connection to Nikki's case. He resigned once the department learned about it, since he failed to disclose that he was a suspect in an ongoing disappearance investigation. Then, in 2010, a breakthrough in an unrelated cold case put Swint in the spotlight again. DNA evidence linked him to the unsolved 1991 slaying of a woman in Dayton, leading to an indictment. But before police could arrest him, Swint decided he was boned and just flat out blasted himself. With his death, authorities lost the chance to get answers directly from him. To this day, police publicly consider Tommy Swint the prime suspect in Nikki McCown's disappearance, but no charges can ever be filed. Over time, several explanations have been put forward for Nikki McCown's disappearance. The most prominent theory centers on Tommy Swint, of course, since he was a predator who was heavily fixated on her. Many in law enforcement and Nikki's family suspect that Swint lured Nikki to Dayton under false pretenses and harmed her, possibly as an act of jealousy or revenge. The evidence is largely circumstantial but compelling. Swint's obsessive behavior toward Nikki, the location of her abandoned vehicle, and the fact that he later turned out to be a violent offender are all factors in favor of the Swint theory. It's theorized that he may have left Nikki's vehicle at her ex-boyfriend's apartment complex to throw off investigators. It's believed that Swint was familiar with where the ex-boyfriend lived, given that Nikki would have to drop her kid off at the apartment at various times. Tommy Swint was believed to be in the habit of stalking Nikki, so it seems highly unlikely he wouldn't have known this location. Unfortunately, if Swint was indeed responsible, his death in 2010 means he took any secrets about Nikki's fate to his grave. Another theory considered early in the case was that Nikki's fiancé might have been involved. Bobby's supposedly unusual actions in the aftermath fueled speculation that he might know more than he let on. However, no concrete evidence ever linked Bobby to the disappearance. Those close to Nikki have mixed feelings. Some initially wondered about Bobby, but others defend him and point out that he cooperated fully and genuinely seemed heartbroken. That said, those who are convinced that he was in on it believe that he may have had motive when he found out that she had been unfaithful to him. This could also explain why he immediately moved to cancel the wedding right after the disappearance. However, there's no evidence whatsoever that Bobby even knew about the affair, and unlike the prime suspect, he doesn't come with a history of violence attached to him. Importantly, Bobby has been cleared as a suspect and is not believed to be involved in Nikki's disappearance in any capacity and has never been charged in relation to any offense. Further, even if he was responsible, which there's no evidence whatsoever to suggest he was, Bobby passed away in 2021. Bobby kept in contact with Nikki's family throughout the years and remained involved in her search. And reading between the lines, it appears that he never really got over her loss. There is also the possibility that Nikki fell victim to a stranger's violence, perhaps even those unidentified men who harassed her at the laundromat. Yet given that she left the laundromat safely and there were no signs of a struggle at that location, this scenario has no clear supporting evidence. It remains an unsettling unknown. That said, it's a very odd coincidence that the harassment incident happened right before she disappeared. As of today, Nikki McCown remains missing, and her case is classified as an unsolved disappearance and a likely slaying. Her family has never stopped searching for answers, with billboards regularly going up asking for information on her whereabouts and prayer vigils to raise awareness. Until new evidence or witnesses emerge, the disappearance of Nikki McCown remains a haunting mystery that begs to be solved. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy here, just reminding you to like and subscribe and share this video. Also, don't forget to check out the Patreon and the YouTube membership if you want to take it to the next level.